Okay guys, today I'm going to do a different video and I'm going to be reviewing Crisis on Infinite Earth. So if you remember, this is a very popular 1980s comic book, 12-part series, and it's a classic because it talked about the collapse of the multi-universe in the DC universe. It had the death of Supergirl and it also had the death of the Flash. So let's get to it. So, the reason why I wanted to do Crisis on Infinite Earths is because I think a couple of months ago there was a show on TV by the CW network, and it's actually called Crisis on Infinite Earths also, and it's based on the comic book, right? But if you look at the show had limited characters. It had people like the Flash, right? The Flash, Black Lightning, Superman. Green Arrow, you had Batwoman, right, and Supergirl, right? So it's actually quite weird because these were actually not. So Batwoman, Black Lightning was actually not in the comic. So let's talk about the comic, right? So the comic came out in the 80s, and yeah, it featured tons of heroes, right? And there's a reason why DC did this, right? So basically. Historically, DC, when they wrote their comics, they had multiple universes. So that concept of they had one Earth, two Earths, three Earths, and these are all parallels of each other. Same heroes, but basically different nuances. So I think in the early 80s, in the mid, I think their universe got a bit complicated because people were reading the different books, and then they were really getting complicated because there was Flash of Earth 2, Flash of Earth 1, right? So for example, our Earth was Earth 1, right? So you had Barry Allen, the Flash, and then there was Earth 2's Flash, which was Jay Garrick, right? The golden age Flash. It was getting very complicated. So basically what the bosses in the DC universe decided to do was they said they needed to collapse all the universes down. So that's why they did that's why they did Crisis on Infinite Earths, right? So Crisis on Infinite Earths talks about the story about multi-universes, right? So multiple universes in DC universe, and it started with this guy called Pariah, right? So this Pariah actually is a scientist, right? So he did some experiment and that somehow triggered the start of the death of the universes. So he is cursed to start flying around and witness the death of all the universes, right? So yeah. So this also started in Earth 3. So in Earth 3, Earth 3 is like the reverse of Earth 1, right? So in Earth 3, whoever's a hero in Earth 1 is a villain in Earth 1, right? So in Earth 3, people like Superman, Batman, and all that, they were called different characters. So Superman was called Ultraman, right? Batman was called the Owlman or something like that. So they were all villains, and the hero of Earth 3 was actually Lex Luthor, right? So Lex Luthor in Earth 3 actually married Lois Lane, right? So there was this big wave of destruction from the antimatter universe coming, and then basically, almost exactly like a mirror of Superman, he put his baby into a capsule and he basically shot his baby out into the multi-universe, right? So his baby's name is Alexander Luthor, right? So the Earth died, Earth 3 died, and the baby was shot out to the multi-universe. Okay, so Crisis also talked about this character called Lila, right? So her name, code name is Harbinger, and her powers is she controls mass, right? So basically, she was recruited by the Monitor, right? So the Monitor is the basically all-powerful being who is monitoring what's happening. So when he saw the antimatter consuming all the universes, he recruited her, and because she could control mass, she basically split her body into multiple parts, and Harbinger went to recruit, right? So she went to recruit, for example, you can see her, right? She went to recruit Solivar, right? Which was the Gorilla King, right? And then she went to recruit the Dawn Star from Legion of Superheroes, right? So yeah, so she went around recruiting, and in the process of going around recruiting, actually, there were these shadow demons, right? So these shadow demons were basically the bad guys who were caused by the multi-universe, caused by the anti-matter universe. So these shadow warriors basically were flying around destroying different Earths. So as Harbinger's different parts were flying around, one of these shadow warriors actually merged with her. So ultimately, when Harbinger merged herself into one, she actually had the evil part, merged into her lah. Okay. So another person she recruited was Psycho Pirate. But this one I'll talk a little bit more about the Psycho Pirate. So all the heroes were gathered together and they were all wondering, hey, what's actually happening? Then the Monitor revealed himself lah and explained that look, the universes are collapsing. The antimatter is eating up all the universes, and he's gathering all the heroes together to fight against this, right? And of course the heroes all blur, right? And then, so the Monitor was basically saying that, look, he has been building all these energy spires to go against the Anti-Monitor. And yeah, so he tasked all the heroes to protect all these energy spires. At the same time, this Anti-Monitor also found Alexander Luthor. So Alexander Luthor, his powers actually, he could be a bridge and create portals between the normal universe and the antimatter universe. Now, the interesting thing about Alexander Luthor is he somehow grows very fast. So when the Monitor found him, he grew at a rapid rate, and he was so he was shot out as a baby, and when the Anti-Monitor found him, he grew quite rapidly and became like pretty much a young boy lah. Okay, so destruction continued to happen, right? And basically, Psycho Pirate was actually recruited by Anti-Monitor. Okay, and I'll talk a little bit more about the Psycho Pirate. Now, again, all throughout the entire series, you could see the Flash popping in and out, right? So you can see on issue 1, he was popping in and out, and he'll pop in and out just for a short period of time, and then the heroes will see him and just wonder what happens. Then he disappears, right? So I'll talk a little bit more about why he was popping in and out. So Harbinger, right, as mentioned, as she was merged with one of the bad Shadow Warriors, I guess the bad part of her took over, and then she basically killed the Monitor lah. Okay, so after she killed him, um, uh, yeah, so after she killed him, she then realized the folly of her ways lah, right? Okay, so now in Crisis on Infinite Earths also they introduced this other character called the new Dr. Light. So it was a big thing back then in the 80s because Dr. Light previously was a Caucasian guy. So in the 80s to have a Asian superhero is quite a big thing lah. So yeah, so this was probably another milestone in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And then as the universes started collapsing, all the Shadow Warriors started to destroy the Earth. So the heroes all started to band together to fight against the Shadow Warriors lah, right? So but it was an uphill task. So many more universes were killed and destroyed, right? So ultimately, what happened was then there was a hologram that was released by the Anti-Monitor. So remember, he was killed by Lila or Harbinger. So the Anti-Monitor basically said that, sorry, the Monitor basically said that, look, his powers were actually quite great, but his powers were basically confined by his physical body. So now that Harbinger has killed him, he has released all his powers, and he basically created a new planet called the Netherverse, right? And then he brought all those heroes which Harbinger was collecting all together onto this one Netherverse to basically save them because remember the universes were being collapsed, right? And then at that point in time, this Alexander Luthor also has grown up, right? And he was almost like a leader lah, right? So and Alexander Luthor was explaining lah, right, the different Earths being collapsing and what they needed to do. So now at the same time, this Anti-Monitor then reveals himself, and the Anti-Monitor basically how he recruited the Psycho Pirate was he basically told Psycho Pirate that, look, if you work for me, right, and Psycho Pirate's powers is he can control emotions. So he basically said like, look, if you work for me, I will give you one entire Earth for you to control, which was quite enticing, right? Can you imagine? He can control an entire planet and play with the emotions. So he was given Netherworld, right, where all the heroes were, and so of course the Psycho Pirate went to work, and went to manipulate the emotions of all the heroes there. And so, so that saw quite a bit of interesting fights. So, for example, we saw the fight between Shazam and Supergirl, right? So, Teen Titans and Supergirl, things like that. So they were all fighting against each other because of the manipulation by the Psycho Pirate. Now, then what Lila or Harbinger did was to put a stop to all to this. She expanded all her powers, and she basically, in the process of expanding her powers, she burned out her own powers, and at the same time, she managed to overcome all the emotion manipulation by the Psycho Pirate lah. Okay, then she started to explain how the multi-universes all came about, and what she explained was at the start there was basically just one Earth lah, right? And at the start, there were these beings called the Owens, or the Guardians of the Galaxies. So these Owens basically presided over this one Earth lah. Now, and then there was this one Owen who was a bit itchy hand lah, so he wanted to see how the universes were created, and then he started to dabble, and all these things are prophecy, and all these things are you can't dabble with the creation of the universe. So in the process of him dabbling in the creation of the universe, he accidentally triggered the creation of the multi-universe, and he triggered the creation of the anti-matter universe, right? So inadvertently he also created the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor, right? So because of that, the Guardians of the Galaxies, the Owens all banded together, and that's how they created the Green Lantern Corps. They created the Green Lantern Corps to basically police the universe, right? Because of all the multi-universes. Now, and then there was also civil war within the Owens. So there was the Bat clans who basically went over to the other side lah, and they to the I guess to the antimatter universe lah, right? So so as mentioned, because of this manipulation and this itchy handness by the Owens, that gave birth to the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor lah. So basically the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor were in a constant battle amongst each other lah, to strike a balance between the universe, right? And and because of Pariah at the start, he himself also was dabbling. He triggered the release of the Anti-Monitor. So Anti-Monitor wanted to basically take control of the entire universe. He started his reign of destroying universes. So all this is very Thanos-like, right? Now, so back to Alexander Luthor. So Alexander Luthor basically said that, okay, guys, since we've all banded together in another world, I think we need to do one all-out assault on the antimatter universe. So his powers was he could create a bridge between the normal universes, the multi-universe, and the antimatter universe. So there you go. He created a portal. He brought all the heroes that was gathered on Netherworld, right? And there's tons of them, and they basically went over to the antimatter universe to try to do a one last assault on the Anti-Monitor, right? So when they assaulted the antimatter universe. Now, the interesting thing is the laws of physics work quite differently in the antimatter universe. So people like Superman and all that, who was invulnerable, basically were vulnerable in the antimatter universe. So major big fight, and I think that was how Supergirl died. She was almost like the last of. So there were 2 or 3 Superman there plus her, right? So there was Superman of Earth 1, Superman of Earth 2. Right, and there was her, Supergirl, so all fighting against the Anti-Monitor, and this guy is all-powerful being, right? So Anti-Monitor basically killed Supergirl, and so that was a big thing in the 80s. So that was death of Supergirl, and at the same time, Flash was captured, right? And the Anti-Monitor basically had this big, huge antimatter gun, right? But what the Flash did was, he vibrated quite fast, so he got out of his trap, and he knocked out the Psycho Pirate, right? And at the same time, because of the antimatter gun that was being built by the Anti-Monitor, he decided that maybe positive matter can destroy the gun. So he started to run circles to create this positive matter vortex, right? So as he started to run very fast to create this vortex, the Flash started to travel back in time. So that's how that explained the Flash started to pop in and out of the comic book lah, at different points in time. So as he was running around to destroy the machine, he himself died lah. So that's how the Flash died. He basically died saving the universe by destroying the anti-matter gun lah, right? So two of the big heroes died, and so back to the main storyline where there was the all-out assault on the Anti-Monitor. Yeah, so long big battle, and basically finally, I think Superman of Earth One, he was the guy who basically summoned all his strength, and he basically destroyed the Anti-Monitor lah. Right, so yeah, so that was the ending of Crisis, and in the process of destroying that, all the universes collapsed into one. So that's how DC managed to use Crisis on Infinite Earths to clean up their multi-universes. That's why in the DC universe there's no more multi-universe, and it's basically just one universe. And one of the other interesting things about the Crisis was, the Flash died, and because the Flash died, Wally West, who was Kid Flash in Teen Titans, he took over as the new Flash lah, right? Right. So yeah, so that's in summary what actually happened in Crisis on Infinite Earths.